Pallu latke, kurike pallu latke. Apologies for last week's podcast wardrobe malfunction. I'm all knotted up today, so nothing is going to go wrong, I hope, and I can speak freely. Today, let's talk about legacies. So inspiring, isn't it? So pull out your will making apps and take a few pointers while I speak to you about what I think one should do about legacies. Who's inheriting from you? Your children, of course, I mean, progeny, sons, daughters, nephew, nieces, grandkids, anybody who's younger than you or, will outlive you is inheriting from you. But what are they inheriting? Aye, there's the rub. I'm not talking about jewelry and houses and cars and properties and material assets like that. I'm talking about all that glorious legacy that you are creating and recreating in your home, in your kitchens. Yes, I'm talking about food legacies. And if you're watching this channel, then obviously you're a foodie, I'm a foodie, so you know what I'm talking about. Food is not just, like I've been saying, is not just about eating and digesting stuff and living like that. Food has so many intangible qualities to it, and because of that, your kitchen is, it's a warm, living, dynamic thing that is sort of giving out all these vibes to the people in that home who live with you and who are partaking of that kitchen. So when you go about your day-to-day lives and cook meals for your family, you are actually enacting, recreating certain traditions. You are, recipes that have been handed down to you from your grandmothers, your mothers, aunts, people you've come across. It could be a cook that you met, a khansama, or a restaurant, a vegetable vendor, anybody. And these are all stories that are getting added to your life story. And these are all traditions and recipes that you are handing down to people who you are creating for. So, especially your children. And it's very important for them to be a part of this journey because that is what they are then taking forward to through their journey of life and so on and so forth. So that is real legacy. That is legacy that you cannot buy, that you cannot get from anywhere except from your own life. Now, I remember this was quite a few years ago. My aunt was in her 40s, and in those days, 40s was like old woman. So she was telling me that, Babu, the older I get, the more I want to eat food from my childhood. And now that I am, close to the age that, sorry, I'm beyond that age of what she was, I realized what she said was so true because I too find that, I long to have stuff that my mother had cooked for me when I was a child. And, her kheer, her fish curries, her, even her, kanji or whatever. And that makes me wonder, what are our children when they grow old? What is the food that they are going to be longing for? Is it going to be pizzas and burgers and pasta and stuff like that, fast food? Or is it going to be our rich Indian legacy? Think about it. Now, India is the 7th largest country in the world. We've got like around 33,000 kilometers or so of land, east, west, north, south, all that. And in this country, if you move just 10 kilometers, why 10 kilometers, even 5 kilometers in any direction, you have different recipes happening with the same ingredients. I mean, something like a simple thing like a dal changes complexion, in every home that you sort of walk into. Somebody is putting sauf in it, somebody's putting garlic in it, somebody's got a special masala mix to put into it. And everything is changing. So just imagine the richness that we have, and so many people, we're sort of occupying all this land. And consider the geography. I mean, on one side you have the freezing Himalayas, and on the other side we're like, on the southernmost tip, we're like barely less than 1,000 kilometers away from the equator. So consider the climatic changes, the geographical, the flora, fauna, everything is changing. And I'm not even, considering the east-west kind of, situation, because again, that is so different. One side is more Mongolian and therefore, influenced by that kind of food. The other side is more, you have Gujarat, you have the deserts, I mean, coastal areas. Just consider the kind of different lifestyles, the different cuisines that are happening all across this country. And this is a richness that I don't think exists in any other country in this world, because I don't think any other country in the world is actually so food oriented and has so many stories to tell about their food. I mean, you go into the Upanishads and the books like Ramayana and Mahabharata and stuff like that. I mean, those are books that are God knows how many years old, thousands of years old, and even there they're talking about food, the medicinal qualities, what is good for what season, what is good for various things, lifestyle related things. And it's really crazy, and all that has come down to us. And even people who have like invaded our country, whether it's the Mughals, or let's start with the Mongols, the Mughals, the Brits, even they have had to adapt to what the local people over here were eating. So you have that rich local cuisine of the people of each region. So Bengal, I'm a Bengali, so I'm more familiar with Bengal. Bengal has its own, the fish and all the green stuff that grows over there, and the kind of joy that Bengal takes in eating all that greenery. They say that Bengali eats everything of a banana tree except the leaf, and the leaf they use to eat on. So you have that kind of stuff, local stuff happening in Maharashtra, where I am currently located. Again, there are so many little things that sort of pop up in conversations, that, oh, have you tried this chutney? Have you tried that? I mean, when you think of Bombay, you only think of vada pav and pav bhaji, but it's not that. There's so much more. I mean, even that usal, misal, and bhakri, and all the other stuff that's there, those are just tips of the iceberg. They have these lovely chutneys and pickles and fish curries. And I mean, within Maharashtra, you have like Kolhapur, and you have Sholapur, and you have Pune, and you have Bombay, and Gujarati influences, Parsi influences, all sorts of things are bubbling and growing and getting cooked in kitchens over here. So you have the local cuisine, which you and I are part of, and that we have inherited, and that we must sort of log somewhere, either write it down or do a blog or speak on your camera or whatever. Make sure your children sort of have some access to it. They might not want it today, but I'm sure maybe 5-10 years from now, if wherever they are and they don't have access to your cooking, they might turn around and say, hey, let's figure out how mom used to cook that. Remember Sundays, dad used to make that mutton curry, or dad would go and get those dosas. I wonder how those dosas, how can we recreate those dosas? So, you never know when they'll turn around and want to actually access those recipes, those traditions, and you need to make sure that they have it. I started off with an algebra book long ago when I first started cooking. And somewhere along the way, I lost that algebra book, and I'm really upset about it. I think somebody stole it, but more about that later. Today, I have folders like this, which are full of all sorts of recipes, little notes jotted down from friends, aunts, cousins, and grandmothers, grandaunts, all sorts of people. And it's crazy. I mean, when I go through this folder, I am not just looking at recipes. I am remembering my relationships with these people. So when you share a recipe with somebody, you're not just sharing a way to make food. You are sharing a part of your story. You are linking a part of you to that person and creating this wonderful web of I don't know, bonding, of love, of nurturing, of caring, and of creating food. Apart from all this local stuff that we, inherent citizens of each state or each region, there have been other influences as well. Like I said, the invaders, I mean, the Mongolians, of course, brought in a lot of their stuff. So you have similarities in the northeast belt with food from, say, parts of Indonesia and Malaysia and Bangkok, Thailand, Burma, and stuff like that. And then when you have the Mughal invaders, so there's so much of Mughlai food that is part of our traditions now, and we eat it so happily. I mean, having you actually do walk into restaurants who are serving Mughlai khana.
Anoop has joined us.
Hi, Anoop, you're late. Anyway, so you have all these, the Mughlai cuisine, and then you have the British coming in, and you have, I mean, from the British, we adapted the British food. So there is, of course, the Anglo-Indian cuisine, which is so important and so great to eat. But apart from that, you have the tradition of the khansama. The khansama was, of course, when Wajid Ali was thrown out. I mean, he was exiled to Calcutta. He sort of trotted off there with all his khansamas in tow.
People who Wajid Ali.
Huh? Wajid Ali Shah, he was the Nawab of Awadh, and the Brits exiled him to Calcutta, Bengal. And he trotted off. He was a great foodie, so he had some 20 or 1,000, I don't know how many thousand khansamas who used to cook. In those days, his kitchen used to spend something like 80,000 rupees a month or something like that on, food items and salaries and stuff like that. So anyway, he went off. He went off to Bengal and he took all his khansamas with him. And of course, he couldn't employ all of them. So a lot of these khansamas had to look for work elsewhere. And they started opening up eateries, of their own in various places and looking for employment in other homes. And I understand that is where the potato came into the biryani, which is now the famous Calcutta biryani, because they realized that if they made that pure mutton biryani that they used to create in Lucknow for the Nawab, it would be too expensive. So they started adding potato to it to sort of balance the weight and give the consumer something else to eat apart from the meat. And so the khansama sort of, they were employed by various clubs. In those days, you had these very high snooty clubs. They're still there, those high snooty clubs. But in those days, I think they were run by the Brits. And the British people also sort of employed a lot of these khansamas, the higher ups, the officials, the big bosses, so to speak. And the khansama was not a trained chef like that, but they were people who had an instinct for food. So when the lady of the house told him, "We want chicken roast," he would make the chicken roast, but I'm sure something in him sort of said that, so bland, no, chicken roast. Let's put a little garam masala in it. Let's put a little jeera and adrak and lasan and all that into it and make this roast really nice. And they did that. And the British guys loved it. As long as it wasn't chili hot, they loved it. So much so that one of these governors, I think of Bengal or something like that, when he retired and went back to England.
A little too close. Yeah.
when he retired and went back to England, he was missing his Khansama's chicken roast. So he told his people that, can you create that sauce? So they tried creating that sauce, and ultimately what happened was that is how Worcestershire sauce that we nowadays think is so British and so American and so whatever, and is only used for Angrezi food. That is how Worcestershire sauce was born. So the origins of Worcestershire sauce is right here in India. The Khansama was also somebody who found employment in the railways, and I don't know how many of you are old enough to have traveled on the Indian railways when they used to have pantry cars, and you got this typical railway food which was so enticing and so delicious. I mean, you got onto the train and you had a choice. You could order Indian, or you could order continental, or you could just have snacks. You could have fish and chips. You could, you got your beautiful fried egg and toast in the morning and things like that in the dining car. I think I experienced that probably just 4 or 5 times in my life. By the time I was grown up enough to travel on trains by myself, those dining cars had disappeared. The pantry cars were still there. Anyway, then of course there was a Khansama who went into the armed forces, the messes. So the food over there, again, the Khansama was somebody who was very adaptable to, the customer or the audience that he was serving. And so they would sort of, create their own kind of varieties of food that would suit the people who were going to be eating it. So the typical army mess food happened. And then, of course, there was the Dak Bungalow. I don't know how many of you have traveled around India and actually stayed in a Dak Bungalow. A Dak Bungalow was created, again, during the British times. These were bungalows that were like pit stops in remote areas across the country, rural areas, jungle areas and stuff like that. Mostly they were very sort of isolated in their situation. And there would be probably just one Darwan who would also double up as a gardener. And there would be this Khansama who was actually the householder, not householder, but the house carer. And he was also a cook. And he would cater for the officials who would come to stay. And of course, he was making all that Dak Bungalow chicken that is now so famous. And dessert, he would turn up the caramel custard. Apparently, caramel custard was a great favorite with the Dak Bungalow guys. So, caramel custard was always being served. And they would also sort of incorporate whatever local ingredients were available. So in some areas, it would be more rotis. In the rice areas, it would be more rice. It would be fish. It would be chicken. It would be mutton. But some of those dishes became really famous, and the Dak Bungalow style of cooking became an inherent part of our country. Then, of course, if you're talking about travel, who can not talk about the dhaba? I love dhaba food. Dhaba is basically, again, a pit stop. I understand that the dhabas happened, dhaba is a takeoff on the word dabba. But I think the Punjabis probably say dhaba for dabba. Dabba means box, tiffin. So post-partition, when a lot of the refugees came into India, the Punjabis have always been very enterprising people, and there's so many stories my mother has told me about refugees she met during that time from Punjab who sort of just picked up their lives and said, we are going to do it, and look at where they are today. But going back to the topic, they sort of, to support themselves, they opened up these little hotels or dhabas, which were like pit stops, which were like mud huts mostly. It was an open kitchen, and there was always like a fire burning over there, and these big dekchis where the food would be cooking all day long, and these thick rotis, Indian flatbread, they would always make it fresh for you. and the sort of the lentil would be cooking overnight, the kali dal, maki dal, and oh, I'm salivating talking about it. And these were stops for the truckers, you know, the trucks that would be driving along. Initially, I think it was the Grand Trunk Road. So the truckers, whenever they stopped, they wanted, you know, they'd be hungry, and mostly it was at night because that's when they would not be driving. And they would stop over there and, you know, have this hot masala chai and, you know, then eat their roti and dal and things like that. And the dhaba, of course, is still there in India, but a lot of them have died down very sadly because the fast food chains have taken over. So today, when you drive, like when Amit and I were driving down to Pantnagar, we found a McDonald's over there, and I was like so sad. You know, where's the dhaba? I want the dhaba food. So we drove a little further ahead, and we actually found a dhaba, thank God. And the beauty of the dhaba is again that whichever part of the country they're situated in, they sort of you know, use the local cuisine to serve. Like if you're driving through Andhra Pradesh and you stop at a dhaba, the food is like chili hot, and they also, you know, they give you these little saucers with red chili in it. At least they used to. And in case you feel you need more chilies in your food, so you have that happening on one side, and then, you know, you come to central India and it's a lot of vegetarian stuff happening. You go to South India, and of course, you know, you're getting in places like Kerala and all, you have these little shops which are selling you fish curry, freshly made fish curry and rice. And they have these little packets of pickles, mostly dried prawns, which are pickled. I love those. I understand that they're called touchings because they have it with, you know, when they're drinking alcohol, they sort of want something salty to eat. So that is another tradition, another legacy of our country, actually. And if you go east, of course, again, the dhabas are very different. You're getting, you know, vegetables, the Bengali style of vegetables, Orissa, Bengal, all, you know, that whole belt you're getting. And if you stop by a river, like there is a very famous, I don't know if that dhaba is still there. There was this one on the banks of the Rupnarayan river when you're sort of, you know, driving out of Calcutta, moving towards Bihar. And on the banks of the river, there was this eatery, and you stop over there, and they sort of go and they catch the fish then and there after you've stopped. And they come back and tell you, okay, this is the fish we've got, so we can make this out of it, this out of it, this out of it, this out of it. What do you want? So if you're, you know, extra hungry, you tell them make all of it, or if you're like picky and choosy, you opt for one. But there is a standard rice, dal, sabzi along with it as well. Bengalis never eat one thing. There was always like 3 things at least to eat. So you have this whole dhaba legacy, which is dying out, sadly. But again, you know, there are...
Nikhil Wagmare has joined. He's saying, I want more mutton dishes.
Go to a dhaba.
Yeah, hi, Nikhil.
And hi, Nikhil. What you need to do when you're looking for a good dhaba to eat is look for the one where all the truckers are, because you'll know that that's offering you the best and the freshest food. So that is the secret in picking a dhaba when you're, you know, out there looking for one. And
Anup says he remembers the pantry car days.
yeah, okay, great.
I don't know what you're responding to.
The train pantry car. Anup, yeah, Anup, yeah. Good that you remember the pantry car days. In fact, talking about the railways, the beauty of the Indian railways is that every station that it stops on, that station food is again an Indian legacy, really, because you don't get that food anywhere else. I mean, the puri aloo in Kanpur station is not replicated anywhere else in the country. You can have it, and you can try puri aloo in you know, one of the Haldirams or XYZ or whatever, but that guy with the cart on Kanpur station, nobody can make that the way he does. And there was this one small little hole in the wall station we stopped at on our way from Gwalior to Kanpur, and TT, the ticket collector on the train, he came running to Amit and he said, "Sir, you have to eat rasgulla over here." So I was like, rasgulla is a Bengali sweet. How can there be rasgullas? So Amit went off to buy these rasgullas, and he came back with these donas. Donas are leaf uh, katoris, bowls made out of leaves, and sal leaves. And there were these big, juicy gulab jamuns, and I cannot tell you how good those gulab jamuns were. So I was like, "Why is this called rasgulla here? This is a gulab jamun." He said, "No, it's got ras. It's ras bhara. It's a rasgulla." I said, "Okay, fine. That is your uh, explanation of a rasgulla. Then fine, accepted." I don't know how many of you are aware of this book called Larousse Gastronomique. It is a French tome, which is, I think the last edition was around.
Saying the kachori at Kasara station in Maharashtra on the Igatpuri is legendary.
The kachoris, yeah.
At Kasara station.
Kasara station, Igatpuri, yes. Kachoris over there, and of course the train omelette is again to die for. And if you need to get that koila ka smell in all the food and the tea. And when you go south, of course, it's copy, copy. We used to copy that all the time. But anyway, to get back to Larousse Gastronomique, that's a French book on the French culinary arts. And I think the last edition goes to about 1,300 pages or so. And it's used in our country by the hotel industry as a training manual or whatever for their chefs and their staff. But can you imagine if somebody tried to write a book like that, a comprehensive book about our Indian cuisine, our Indian culinary art? And it is an art. Every part of this living, breathing, dynamic land has its own culinary art. How many tomes would that go into? I mean, we have 28 states and 8 union territories. So that's like, even if you do just one book per state, UT, you would have like 36 books, and each of them running into, as Amit says, 2,000 pages. I say, okay, 1,000 pages might do. But what a rich legacy that is. And what are we doing about it? It's really sad. So, I mean, apart from the kansamas and the dhabas and all, of course, you have the royal cuisine. I mean, the kings of our country, and every state had a ruler, and whether they were, the kings, the maharajas, or the nawabs, or whoever, they had their own cuisines, they had their own particular way of getting things done, and that food was all very rich, and it was all, lots of dry fruits going in, and lots of flavored, those fragrant stuff like aromatics going into it and things like that, and the best grains of rice and the best wheat. And I heard the story once that apparently there was this Maharaja, I don't know if it was Tripura or where, but every time he was served puris, you know what puris are, right? Those are those fried Indian breads that they sort of puff up. In Bengal we call them luchi. So he would eat there's a thin side to it and there's a thicker side to it. So he would eat the thin side and he would discard the thick side. And initially when I heard the story, I thought, what a waste, how can he be wasting food like that? But the story goes that that thick side was then, which he hadn't sort of jhuta karod, he hadn't like bitten it or bitten out of it or whatever. That would go to the staff in the kitchen or the poorer people who would not have access to eating a puri or something, because they would be eating, regular rotis. So that was his way of sort of, making sure that his guys also ate the puris. But anyway, so of course the most famous royal cuisines are probably those of Hyderabad, and a lot of it is also from Rajasthan, because that Lucknow, yeah. Uh, Lucknow, and then Bengal, then Maharashtra also has. Apparently, chicken kolhapuri is what came out of the royal families of Maharashtra. Then Gujarat, again, the Gujarat royal families. I've actually eaten something called shrimp curry. You know, curry is that gravy dish that is made with ground gram flour base, basin, and it's normally vegetarian, but the the home I had gone to, she had actually got it made with prawns, with shrimps, and it was good. Nothing I would like, die for, but it was interesting to know that even prawns could be made into curry like that. And of course, then you have the frontier food. The frontier food is again, you know, people who went, the soldiers who went to the frontiers to fight wars and stuff like that with, the neighboring countries or whatever. And they would cook for themselves, neighboring states. They would cook for themselves, and because they couldn't have open fires because that would tell the enemy where they would dig pits and, fires in there and put their food in there and then cover it and let it cook. And most of the time it would cook through the day, and when they came back home, when they came back to the camp at night, that is when they would take it out and eat. So this was the start of the slow cooking, the slow fire. And a lot of the meat dishes, like what is known as lal mas, famous from Rajasthan, started off like that, where they had mutton, they had red chilies, and they had salt, and they just sort of dunked it in and let it cook. And when they came back, there was this delicious, spicy, tender meat falling off the bones. And similarly, that's where your tandoori items started from, your chicken and the black dal, the lentil, getting cooked like that. Then that's probably where the tandoor started off from. And once you had the tandoor coming out, you had tandoori chicken, and which became famous, so much so there were jokes about tandoori chicken being the national bird and stuff like that. And then you had leftover tandoori chicken. What did you do with the leftover tandoori chicken? Ask Amit, he'll tell you. You made butter chicken. So it's really interesting how so many of these things have sort of evolved and developed, and there are stories to every dish in this country. There is heritage, attached to every item that we eat on a daily basis. And take something like, say, posto, okay? The Bengali is very fond of eating posto. Posto is what? Poppy seeds. They grind it up, and in most homes, poppy seeds, especially in West Bengal, poppy seeds are eaten almost on a daily basis. So you can have it just as a paste with a little mustard oil on it, or you can cook it with vegetables. You can, add it to a gravy dish, and it's supposed to sort of calm you down, and poppy seeds after all, and give you a really good afternoon siesta. So, but I haven't seen any poppy fields around Bengal, so I really wonder, how did posto reach Bengal? And for a land that is, the people in Bengal aren't very rich, but posto is an expensive, ingredient. So how did it happen? Where was the link? I need to find that out, and I think I'm going to. Then you have the tribals, the most interesting part of our country, and they are everywhere. I mean, every part of this country has tribals living there, and from Manipur and Agartala, and some are even from Meghalaya and Assam and stuff like that. So the tribals have their own particular type of cuisine. They are more dependent on what they are growing. Their food is freshly cooked then and there, and they have all these kinds of herbs and vegetables that you don't find anywhere else. For instance, when Amit and I went to Dehradun last year, we discovered things like jakhya and the local sags, and Kachnar flower, and various things like that, which are so interesting and really so delicious. And you don't find it anywhere outside the borders of Uttarakhand. Similarly, when you go to say Manipur, which is where every dish and almost on a daily basis is cooked with that one piece of dry fish going into everything, whether it's a dal, whether it's boiled vegetables, whether it's a salad, or whether it's a fish curry. Even I think pork, chicken, no, I don't think we use it in that. But any fishy related stuff or vegetarian related stuff, there is one piece of that thung thap or hidol as we call it in my family, or ngari as they call it in Manipur. But you leave those borders and you come, further down to Calcutta or something, it's not even available in the markets, and you have to like beg somebody to, get you that stuff.
Saying poppy fields are extensively grown in Bihar in the British era, and it went down the river to Bengal on the Ganges.
Ah, okay. Thanks, Anup, for telling us about the poppy fields.
So repeat what Anup has said so that others know.
Yeah. So Anup says that apparently Bihar had a lot of these poppy fields, and it used to go down the river to Bengal during the British era. Yeah. Okay.
On the Ganges.
Thanks on the Ganges. Yeah. Thank you, Anup. Uh, so to get back to the tribals, I remember once I was driving from Calcutta to Murshidabad with an aunt of mine, Padma Mashi, and she was actually my mother's best friend, and she then became my best friend. So I was traveling with her to Murshidabad, and we actually drove down this place called Plasi, and I realized, wow, I'm on the plains of Plasi where that big battle was held, and this is history. Like, where are the soldiers, where are the horses, where are the elephants and the cannons and all that. Anyway, we stopped at a place a little beyond Plasi, I think, and it was a Santali village. And Santals are the Adivasis, the tribal people who live in the eastern parts of India. And amazing tribe. We had stopped there for dinner, and there was this guy who was playing this drum. The drum started, was from his chest level, went down to his ankles. It was called a madol, and it was hung around his neck by a rope, and he would just bash on that like boom, 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 and there was a fire burning in the middle, and he was like dancing all around it, and it was my hair standing on end just talking about it, recounting it to you. It was magical. It was an experience that I cannot forget, and it's vivid in my mind. I can hear the sounds, and I can even see the insects sort of, flying into the fires and embers and things like that. And there was this old woman in a tent, and I was visiting her, and she was like toothless old woman, gray hair and all that. And she looked at me and she said, "You want to eat dinner with me?" So I said, "What have you cooked?" She said, "I made haria and khasimas." So I was like, haria and khasimas. I looked at Padma Mashi. I was like, what is haria and khasimas? So Padma Mashi told me haria is like a rice wine kind of thing. It's a fermented rice thing. And khasimas, of course, was mutton curry. So you have all this happening, and like if you go to the northeast, you've got lovely things like bamboo shoots and all sorts of herbs that you don't get anywhere else. And it's crazy that we don't know about it, we don't write about it, we don't talk about it, and it's only when you meet somebody who's from that region. Like in Bangalore, I met this little Manipuri girl called Aarti, and both of us were like, we were bonding immediately. I was like, "Oh, you're from Manipur, then you must be eating this and you must be eating that." And she was like, "Have you eaten this particular thing?" And we were talking about iromba and this and that, and all sorts of, strange sounding words were coming out of our mouths. And it was an immediate bonding. She was like probably 40 years younger than I was, and a lovely girl. And she immediately took my phone number. She went back to Manipur, and the next thing I know, I'm getting this huge parcel with the dry fish and the cured, what do you call it, soya beans and bamboo shoot. So much of bamboo shoot. So it's crazy how people can bond over food. And it's crazy to think that all this heritage is ours. It's nobody else's. And we need to be so proud of it, and we need to sort of, build it and make it grow and let it come back. It is history. It is us. We are the holders of history, so to speak. We are making it every day. Every dish that we eat, everything that we make, everything that has been handed down to us, that is history. Not what you read in the books, which keeps changing with every author who writes it, but what we carry forward and what we relate to our progeny is what is going to live on and on and on and on. And nowadays, with the advantage of the internet, you can actually exist on the, what is it called? Etherverse? Interverse, whatever. And that is one of the things that sort of, that I saw sense in when we started doing the Slow Fire Chef. And Amit and I don't have children, so I was like, let me tell my secrets, my cooking stories to the world, so that maybe someday, 100 years from now, if these videos still exist or whatever, if people are still watching, then maybe somebody will turn around and say, hey, let's try cooking that, dal gosht maybe, or whatever, wasabi prawns or whatever it is. And part of my legacy will carry on. The other thing apart from legacy, how long are we? The other thing apart from legacy is, which is intrinsic to this, is traditions. So many traditions and rituals are linked with our food. I mean, obviously it has to, because every festival that we celebrate has food in it. For instance, today, Happy Eid to all of you who celebrate it. It's Eid ul Adha. Bakra Eid. Okay, so this is the day when everybody eats mutton, lamb, goat, whatever. And I had this Muslim lady who was cooking for me for a while, and on Bakra Eid, she sort of said, I'm not coming to work because it's my Eid. So I said, no problems, don't worry about it. And she didn't come to work, but her son came with this big dekchi full of mutton, cooked mutton. And it was cooked in such a way that I could either make a biryani out of it, or I could turn it into a curry, or I could eat it as it was. And I was so touched. I mean, this is what traditions are all about. Because, like for instance, in Bengal, I know when a child is born, after 4 months or 6 months, depending on when they start teething, or I think depending on the gender, they have what is called a ceremony called Mukhe Bhat. Mukhe Bhat is Muh mein chawal. So, which means the first time the child eats grain, eats anaj. And it's a whole ceremony around it where the mother sort of puts all sorts of things on a plate, on a steel plate or a silver plate, depending on the economic condition of the home. And the plate always has like a pen, a bit of gold, a bit of silver, a book, or various things which would indicate, depending on what the child goes for, what the child grabs, what his or her profession might be. I apparently went straight for the pen. Yeah, the pen. Anyway, so starting from right then, and of course then you have the iconic cliche-ridden scenes from the Hindi movies where the mother comes with a katori of kheer. Beta, tumhare liye kheer banaya hai. And the beta has to eat that kheer, and it's a very emotional scene because the beta hasn't eaten kheer for the last 10 years. Hi, Freddie. So kheer is a rice pudding which is made specially for birthdays, and it is supposed to give longevity to the child, and it is considered a very what should I say, a good fortune kind of dessert which is served. So all occasions which have anything to do with celebration, there is always kheer. And I think this is true in the south as well, and I think it is also true in the north. For instance, when Amit and I shifted into our new home, my mother-in-law told me that cook some, boil some milk and let that milk boil over so that your house is always full of abundance. So it really pained me, but I watched that milk boil over my new gas range, and I was like, okay, maybe there will be enough affluence in this home for me to buy another range sometime soon. But and then of course there's halwa, which is so special. You have the gurdwara. Oh, I forgot the gurdwara food. That is another tradition in our country, another legacy in our country. The gurdwara food, that food you don't get anywhere else, and I can take a bet on it. Langar, yeah, the langar, the food that they serve, and it's for free. Like you can just walk into a gurdwara at a meal time and sit down, and they will serve it to you and not ask you any questions. They don't want to know what your religion is, what your beliefs are. You're hungry, you've gone there, all you need to do is cover your head, because I think it's more to do with a hygiene issue than anything else, which probably started that tradition. But okay. So you cover your head and you sit down there, and they give you dal, roti, and that langar wali dal is a very famous dal. And then they give you this kada prasad. Kada prasad is nothing but a halwa, a sweet dish made with whole wheat flour. And it's cooked with ghee and lots of sugar. And it is the yummiest halwa that I have ever eaten.
A lot of our temples also serve food.
Yeah, and then of course there are temples that not really, temples don't serve food, the ashrams serve food. So you have temples probably attached to ashrams. Ashrams are again, ashram is somewhere where you take rest. That is the origin of the word ashram. So you have these very basic kind of buildings with rooms and beds and stuff like that. And you can go and stay there, and they take very nominal fees. Yeah, it's for pilgrims, and they take very nominal fees, probably 10-20 rupees for a room for a night or something like that. And they serve you again this food which is very basic but so delicious. I mean, Amit talks about his grandfather's ashram where he used to eat puris in Vrindavan. He used to eat puris with this aloo sabzi, and the aloo was cooked with nothing but turmeric and maybe a little bit of ginger, or no ginger, sorry, just turmeric, salt, and probably a little bit of cumin. So we have that tradition as well. Then going back to the Bengali traditions, I'll tell you the girls' side of it. So when you're on the verge of getting married, when everything's been fixed and you're getting married like 2 months down the line or 1 month down the line, all the women in the family.
Dharmasthala is a temple town in Dakshin, Canada, and they serve vegetarian food regardless of who shows up, and it is very famous.
So apparently Anup is telling us that there is this place called Dharamsthala. Yeah, where they serve vegetarian food, and they serve it to anybody regardless of who you are. Where is it?
Canada.
In South Kannada.
Dakshin Kannada.
Dakshin Karnataka. Okay. So I think I'm headed there, and Amit might follow.
Freddy is saying, hi you beauty, been on for some time.
Okay.
And Ash has just joined us, and she's making the sad smiley.
Ash is very late. Okay. Anyway, so what I was telling you about Bengali traditions regarding vis-a-vis women, girls. So you're all set to get married a month or 2 months down the line, and all the women, the elderly women, the elder women in the family, they sort of invite you to their homes and feed you. And it's called Ai Budo Bhat. So just before you turn married woman, the food that you eat. And they, of course, feed you all your favorite foods, and these are women who know you from since you were a child. So somebody is giving you chili chicken and fried rice or whatever because they know that's the food you love, and somebody is giving you khichdi and begun bhaja and fish fry and stuff. And then when your mother does it for you,
Chaiti
hers.
Das Gupta, hello, good evening.
Hi, Choiti. So when your mother does the aiburo bhat for you, that is of course the most special one. And there's this huge thali plate, steel plate, which has like a mountain of rice on it, of course. And then you have to have 5 types of fried items. So there's invariably aloo and parmal, pointed gourd, and vadi, which is those small little dried lentil balls or whatever. And you have 5 types of things which are fried. Then you have your dal, you have the posto, you have something bitter, which is karela or it's neem patta, and then you have shukto, and you have like 5 different kinds of vegetables, and then you have the fish head. The fish head is served to you, it's like fried or whatever, and then the fish tail is served to you. So this is like from a big fish, so you've got that big a head and that big a tail. So these 2 things, monsters, are there. And then you've got fish curries, and then you've got a chicken curry, you've got a mutton curry. And it's crazy. It's like, as if the women feel that you are not going to get any food, once you step into your in-laws' home. And so like, let's just feed her, make her feel special. So that's what happens to a girl before she gets married. After she gets married, and she goes to her in-laws' place, they have something which is called a bohu bhat, which is the bride is cooking for the in-laws. So of course no cooking happens, but you sort of go into the kitchen and touch the kadhai with the spatula, and that is considered that you have cooked it. And then you serve a little bit to each person in the family to sort of show that. And that is again a very special sort of thing, because the whole in-laws side is called, and some of your own family are called, and everybody sits down, and it's again like a 10-course meal with which is again done only in Bengal that I know of. I don't think it happens in the north. They've sort of adapted it to be like a reception, a wedding reception or whatever. But the Bengali aiburo bhat is one of the most sweet rituals, traditions that I have ever seen. And it's a great way of breaking ice, and a great way of the bride getting to know all her in-laws. So much of laughter and joke and fun, all that happens, and they're constantly teasing her. Oh, you gave me less. Oh, you gave them more. Oh, I'm not getting rasgulla. Is the food running out? Have you not cooked enough? All sorts of teasing remarks like that. And it's great fun. Then 9 months later, you're pregnant and you're going to have the baby. So before you have the baby, again, all the elder women sort of feed you, and that is called shad. Shad means taste. Shad is, I think this tradition probably started out in the old days when child mortality, pregnant women very often did not survive their pregnancy, especially the first pregnancy. Nobody knew how the body was going to perform or whatever. So they would feed the girl all her favorite foods again, so that just in case she didn't make it to the other side, she would at least have died a happy soul. So then you have something called the Jamai Shushti, which again a lot of people feel is a patriarchal thing, but I think it is more to do with the mother of the girl sort of feeding her son-in-law, because she wants him to be happy. She wants him to, and the thing is, in traditional Bengal in the old days, the son-in-law really never came to the girl's home. It was considered something that you didn't do, because you never looked back at the girl's home. The girl's home was considered a stranger's home, so to speak. And so the only way to get the groom to come over and to be part of the family and to sort of get him in was to give him this special day when the mother would sort of, the bride's mother, the girl's mother, would cook for her son-in-law. and she would serve him all these various, again, it would be that, whole jing bang lot of food. So there are all these beautiful traditions that are tied to food that are so lovely, that all have, again, some sort of a significance, and various things which are sort of linked to it, which you don't find in a recipe book, and you don't really find, I don't know. These are things that you sort of hand down. It's all word of mouth. It's like probably originally how the all the holy books were written or whatever. I mean, these were all stories that happened and happened and happened and happened, and somewhere along the line they stuck, or they became part of cinema, or they became part of literature, or whatever. I mean, somebody like Satyajit Ray has used food beautifully. I don't know if any of you Bengalis over there might have seen a movie called Goopika Baghabain, which was actually a children's movie. And the two protagonists in Goopika and Baghabain, they get this, they're granted this boon by the gods, and they can sing beautifully, and they can go wherever they want, and they can eat whenever they want. So every time they want food, they sort of just clap their hands, and uh, there's a scene where like matkas of rasgullas and gulab jamuns, these earthen vessels filled with all these foods, were like raining down from the skies, and everybody was eating, and it was all good fun. And of course, for children, it was probably, that's why it's stuck in my head. It was one of the most memorable scenes. And so, food is, I guess, think about it, it's really one of the most, you know, like I said, one of the most alive things in our lives, and tangible as well as intangible. So it's like it's there. And before I go, I want to tell you a small little story which might sort of bring home the point. When we were living in Jakarta, and I was going to this American school, I think I was in the 6th grade or something, 10 years old. And this was like a joint embassy school, so it was an American school. And it had children from all sorts of nationalities. All the diplomats' kids were coming there to study. So there was a Filipino, Malaysian, Singapore, British, Americans, of course. And I think I was the only Indian over there. There was a very handsome German boy, I still remember, called Hans Mueller. So anyway, so the teacher thought it would be a good, fun, educative kind of thing if all of us brought something to eat from our homes that the whole class could taste. So I went back and I told Mom, I have to take food for my class. So she said, okay, how many children in your class? I said, 25, counting me. She said, okay, tomorrow I'll make you 25 aloo parathas and you can take that. So I walked back to school with a tibba full of aloo parathas. And the minute it was opened and these kids got the aroma.
Goopika Baghabain is Bengal's generational food fantasy personified. Chaiti.
Yeah. I agree with you, Choiti. Goopika Baghabain is totally food fantasy. Oh, remember the scene with that king eating the chicken legs, those humongous chicken legs? But anyway, so I went in with my aloo paratha ka dibba, and the minute I opened the dibba and the aroma hit the class, everybody was like, grab, 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 grab. Before I could say Jack Robbins, everything had like disappeared. There was nothing left for me. And these kids were all coming back to me, hey, what is this called? This is so great. These are like tortillas and da 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 da. And I was suddenly the heroine of the class. I had brought this amazing food, and I felt so proud. I was like, wow, my mom's a great cook. India's a great country, and I had the best food in the class today. And I think that is so true. We have food which has all palate tastes. We have spicy, and we have the totally bland. We have fried, we have boiled, we have roasted, we have raw, we have health benefits, so many health benefits to every food that we eat. And I'm sure if, one travels to Europe and America and talks to people who are actually cooking fresh food and not eating from, whatever those frozen things are and ready to eat and stuff like that. I'm sure we'll find a lot of this over there as well. But within the boundaries of our kingdom, India, I think there's so much to explore. I, I mean, the five-star hotels have tried it. They keep having these festivals. But again, they're just picking the iconic dishes. The very few, the usual suspects are over there. Then you have all these ready-to-eat brands like Kitchens of India, and I think ITC has another brand as well. And then you have, now I believe the Tatas are also getting into it. So you have all these guys with ready-to-eat brands which are again sort of, pulling at your emotional heartstrings and talking to you about mom's food and traditional food and things like that. But they're not. What's traditional and what's mom's food and what's grandma's food is what you're making in your kitchen. And you need to teach your kids, pal. So are we...
Yeah. Yeah, he's saying the size of sweets, the chum-chums and all that was also very big in Gopi and Bangla.
Yeah, the chom-choms were like really big. So any questions?
No questions. You just need to remind them to please switch on your notifications.
Okay, so since there are no questions, I am tuning out. But before I do, please, 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 please turn on that notification bell so that YouTube sort of tells you when we're on the air, when our episodes are coming and things like that. Because we don't want you to miss anything. Because when we don't see you there, we feel very sad. And I'm wearing my chashma nowadays so that I can see you. And so just move a little closer and it'll be better. Okay, bye bye, and see you again in the next episode.